Hello and welcome to a new PHOTOMUSE 4, I believe. And as ever, it's Friday afternoon when I choose to do this. I don't know, my mind seems to be in the right place for it. And I love walking down Portobello Road just because it gives me so much to see, so much to inspire me. Although I have got quite a few things on my mind that I want to unburden myself of and put the burden onto you, so to speak, to deal with. So I'm going to kick off. I tell you what I'm absolutely obsessed with at the moment is the state of continued freedom for all artists working anywhere in the Western world. And I'll tell you why this is. I'm convinced that the polarizing nature of politics, as we've been observing over the last few months, the last few years perhaps, it's increasing, as exemplified by the Brexit vote in June this year in the UK and the battle for the US presidency with a contender like Donald Trump really pushing hard and snapping at the heels of Hillary Clinton. I'm going to say right now, I hope she wins. I'm going to just lay out my political stall for you, as it were, and say that I'm definitely a liberal. I voted to Remain. In fact, I campaigned for the Remain side, and I am totally opposed to not to everything that Donald Trump says, because I think there's some things he's right on, but it's not what he says, it's how he says them. It's incredibly divisive. His whole politics is based on that of the populist, and the way that chimes with the Brexit vote is that they both used the same tactic. To put it in American parlance, they doubled down on the base. So they identified their base, and the base is a disaffected section of the population who, in my view, have been ignored and find themselves adrift in a world which they consider too liberal, and where their aspirations and sense of themselves has been disturbed to the extent that they feel that there is no option but to protest and to take a stand in favour of a candidate or a movement which suggests change. And you see this in the Scottish nationalism at the moment, that there are people who are in many ways incredibly liberal, well-thinking, educated people who for some reason believe that their life and the life of their country is better served by separation and insularity. And the trouble with this is that it may be that Scotland should be its own state and that the UK should be free of Europe, although I disagree with this. I'm just going to wait for it's an aggressive Deliveroo driver really giving it to a driver of a car. I tell you, London is one angry city at the moment. Anyway, but the reason I'm against insularity, even if it might be better for some aspects of the nation to separate from the rest of the world, is because insularity is always divisive. I'm just going to break for a second. Yeah. Anyway, insularity makes us view people as either with us or against us. It crystallizes the concept of the other. We're not all in it together anymore. We're somehow on one side or other of the argument, and if you're not on the same side of the argument as us, or for some reason not in your control, you cannot be on the same side of the argument, i.e. in the Brexit or Trump school of thought, you're basically foreign and without power, and you're an illegal alien, or you're hoping for greater economic and political stability, and you travel to one of our countries in the hope of finding it, that you are in fact a bad thing. And where have we seen this dehumanizing politic before? And it's in Nazi Germany. The only way the Nazis made the Germans turn, who were and are to a certain extent the most cultured people, the only way they got them to turn against Jewish people was to describe them in terms of the other, and to dehumanize them, and to remove from them the qualities of humanity that we all share and that we respect and enjoy. And this is what's happening now. People like Nigel Farage and in a much more covert but tacit way, people like Liam Fox and David Davis of the mainstream right. And now I've just seen my friend John Levine, who is, I'm going to have to stop and talk to him. I'll come back to you in a second. So I'm back, and just wanted to continue this by relating it to art. The whole thing of the increased polarity of society, art does very well in these conditions because it gives art something to grab hold of. So writers, photographers, poets, whatever, these are interesting times, and this is inspiring for new work, and I'm excited to see what comes out of it, but I'm not seeing an awful lot at the moment. And I'm also seeing a great deal of complacency, and I'm not usually that concerned about situations like this. I'm a little bit less, a little bit more politically apathetic and undecided about things. But in this case, I can really sense a change in the tone of politics, in the tone of the discourse, daily discourse around racism. You can even use the word fascism, because I think some of this is getting fascist. I mean, this week, the government vaunted the use of dental checks on the tiny number of minors it's accepted from the Calais refugee camp. I mean, this is disgusting. And the reason that they're doing it, and the reason that even Labour suggested using dental checks to check that the children were children, was because they sense that that's the way the story is going in the population. And this is truly horrifying. And we have to challenge that at all times, because if our little glimmer of freedom, and in the course of human history, and certainly in the course of the last 1,000 years, we haven't had, as a race, a huge amount of freedom. I mean, there have always been people at the top who've been free to do what they wanted to do. But in terms of democratically assured freedom, artistic freedom, freedom of expression, and all sorts of freedoms to think and do and write and draw and photograph what you like, within reason, of course, and within the confines of what is intelligently acceptable, we are now at a crossroads. And we may discover that all of that wonderful freedom that we have enjoyed and grown up with in the post-war era, particularly since democracy has spread to the Eastern European states and the fall of Russian communism and the threat of the Cold War and so forth. And I'm not even going to go started on where we are with Russia at the moment. But we may well discover that that was just a flash in the pan, and that we're returning to form, and we're returning to a state of repression, and that these people who are now in the mainstream of right-wing politics are taking the argument to the people and inflaming a certain response, which they will enact through ballots, through the democratic process, and through that process reduce the freedoms that we are allowed with the so-called democratic assent of the public. And as artists, we need to oppose that. So it's deeply worrying to me, all of this, and I hope it worries you too. I mean, we are as artists, we're the canaries in the coal mine, or art is the canary in the coal mine, and that canary is beginning to pick up a little whiff of something quite nasty. And anyway, so that's got that off my chest, and I'm sorry for unburdening myself. But please, if you disagree with me and you think that I'm being maybe overly sensationalist about this, or you agree with me, or whatever, let me know. Get in touch with me at alex@flowphotographic.com. It's alex@flowphotographic.com. Through the Photographica podcast website, that's photographicapodcast.com, or through my Twitter, which is @Schneideman331, and that's Schneideman with no R and only one N, @Schneideman331. Okay, so yesterday I had the great pleasure of going out and about in London, and amongst other things, visiting with my son Felix the new Turner Prize exhibits at Tate Britain, and I just wanted to make a couple of observations on that, because it's become an annual event, obviously, and it's become incredibly prestigious. And if you win 25,000, and your name is, well, I don't know that it's set forever, but it certainly has created some of the artistic megastars of the recent era. And it is a little bit X-Factor-ish, and the way that we're invited to go and look at it and engage with the work, and because the works tend to be immersive in the sense of their installations, and we walk into them and we live in them for a period of time and spend time within the spaces that have been created between the Tate curators and the artists. We are invited to have an opinion about what we are seeing, and that's meant to be a good thing, which I think it is. I don't think it's automatically a good thing. I don't think we have to have an opinion of it. I found it quite hard, if I'm honest, to have an opinion of any of it. I just would like to say, Michael Dean, I thought is most likely to win it, because his room, if you like, his show is probably the most powerful concept work in the Turner offering. His human pieces are quite affecting, and I like the form of his work. The pennies that are in a mound, representing 21,000 somewhat pounds, which is the amount a family of 4 needs to live in a year, is quite impressive. However, I think since Ai Weiwei's exhibition of ceramic beings at the Tate, in the Tate Turbine Hall, Tate Modern Turbine Hall, it's quite hard to make a mound of anything anymore, and that's kind of typical of sensationalist art, in that once you've done something, as spectacular it is, and to see 21,000 pounds worth of pennies in one room is really quite amazing, and you can marvel at the quantity of it in a way, and at the same time you can, it looks both huge and tiny at the same time, which I think is a great quality of the work itself. But it also seems to me trite on that scale, and it seems to me, apparently Michael Dean took away 1 penny so that in theory, in that stack, there's 1 penny less than the amount of money that family of 4 represented in the exhibition need to survive. And okay, for me, it leaves me cold. That hooks leave me cold. I don't need them. I don't need a reason to love something if that thing is lovable to me, and I don't need to be manipulated in that very prosaic way. I find it. That's me anyway. So I didn't, and I thought that that Helen Martin's work, which is the first room that you come to, is pretty interesting, actually, and would be my favourite if I was a voter, and I can't vote, but I'm not one of the judges, alas, but I thought her work was genuinely new. I felt that what she did was make me bend to her view, and I like that. And I felt that I was looking at things in a way that I would never have imagined ever. And she uses new workings of very easily recognisable materials to make forms, constructions out, which all kind of look familiar, but at the same time are completely unfamiliar. And it sort of sneaks into you. So for me, Helen Martin's work was the best, and the most original, and the most affecting. But, people seem to love the Michael Dean work. And the other 2 rooms, they didn't get to me at all, so I can't even be bothered to talk about them. One was photographic, but I didn't think it kind of had any more impact than you'd expect from a degree show. But one thing to say in favour, or at least in mitigation of some of the failings of the Turner Prize, is that the work is representative of, or that the exhibition is representative of work shown by each of the chosen artists over the last year. So they're not being judged on what we see, they're being judged on the galleries, on the work that they've shown in spaces over the last 12 months. And that's important because they're trying to put on a show which is a curation of an artist's work, put on it in a way that possibly gives the wrong context to the work. So it's quite hard to really... Sometimes they may fail at that. I don't know, because you haven't seen the work elsewhere. So that really means that we're kind of judging as visitors to this. We're kind of judging the Tate for being able to put on a representative show of an artist's work, taken from work recently exhibited, and possibly that's kind of difficult. I didn't. It's something that you should go and see for yourself and see if any of it affects you. But I definitely think it's a good thing, because it definitely pushes us. And at first you might hate things, and then if you give it time, and Felix, my son, who really visually really does understand things in visual terms, was totally unimpressed with it. But I think that he didn't. He needed to spend more time with it, and I think that time is the thing. So if you can go, don't rush through it. Go and take time and see if you can get something from it. Because in the end, it's one thing to turn up and just criticise and say you don't get it, it's ugly, or whatever. But actually, if you come to these things wanting to enjoy them, you actually get so much more out of them. That doesn't mean to say you have to completely give up your critical faculty, but you do get more by being positive. And most artists, when you talk to them about their work and show them work, are positive. They have a positive attitude to work. They don't automatically criticise. And I think as the public, as we have a responsibility to be more open to new things than we are. The discourse, as much promoted by the Sun, who are so vitriolically anti-immigrant, and the Express, is that there are things which are good and there are things which are bad. And they would see the Turner Prize as being a complete waste of time and money, because you can't get it in an instant. It doesn't represent anything that they recognise as being valuable. And so, again, we're polarised. We're invited to be polarised. Whereas I think it should be okay to be ambivalent about these things. You can be ambivalent about the work on show in any exhibition. In fact, I think in 99% of everything I see I'm ambivalent about, and just a very few things really, really touch me. And that's why when we go to the National Gallery or one of the great collections, there's so much good stuff in there, but that's been curated out of literally millions and millions of pieces of work, many of which they may have in their basements, in their own stores, which we never see, which we would feel completely ambivalent about, but it's cherry-picked. And so the Turner, in a way, is quite good, because it's slightly un-cherry-picked. I mean, it might be the best of the so-called best of contemporary art at any given time, curated by very few people, and but at least it's quite a flat exposition of work that's going on now, and should give you a feeling for where we are, where the cutting edge of art is at this moment. Now, you may not like that, or what you see, you may not enjoy it, but it is where we're at, and that's important. That's really important. So that's my piece on the old. See, more car fighting going on. Yeah, you got these big cars, men shouting at women. Look at this, the girl's getting out. Okay, she's getting out. I'm not angry. But look the way you're driving, you fucking idiot. See what I mean? This town is going crazy. Oh no, the guy's turning around now. What's he going to do? This is incredible. The guy's now parking across this woman. He's doing... I mean, it's unbelievable. People are just shouting at each other. I tell you, the level of tolerance in this country has dropped to zero. I don't know if it's the country or if it's London or what, but people seem to be completely on edge. Anyway, completely opposite to that, I saw this fantastic thing this week, which was I was walking my dog Sydney in Hyde Park early one morning, beautiful crisp morning, I think it was Wednesday morning, and I saw in the distance two orange figures, and on closer inspection closer inspection, God, I sound like a twat. As I got closer, they turned out to be Buddhist monks, and when I got even closer, you could see that they were Tibetan Buddhist monks from their robes. And I'm quite sympathetic to Buddhism, without being religious, and there's a lot in Buddhism which I think anybody could understand and relate to and get something from. But leaving that aside, these two monks were picking chestnuts from the trees, from under the trees where chestnuts are in season at the moment and were just falling to the ground, and they were gathering them up. And it was such a sort of extraordinary sight. And I said hello to them, and they said hello back, and I walked on, and then one of them got a selfie stick out and took a picture of himself in the park, which I just thought was beautiful. Not only because it wasn't what you expect from a Buddhist monk, and the sudden flash of of high technology, in the otherwise bucolic or relatively bucolic setting of a park, collecting chestnuts and so on. But also from the point of view that I love the idea that it's a selfie stick, and Buddhists actually deny the existence of the self. So I wonder what they were photographing. Their consciousness was, I suppose. But anyway, I thought I'd leave you with that. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it, and I love hearing from you. Please don't hesitate to drop me a line, whichever way you want to do. If you want to contact me at alex@flowphotographic.com, come and visit me at the studio. You can get all the details from my website, flowphotographic.com. And I look forward to being in communication with you. Thanks very much. Goodbye.